Today we're talking Quest 3 updates in v66. Version 66 just launched in the public test channel, and as always, Luna did a data mine to see what was in the update. There's some actually pretty exciting stuff, some interesting stuff, so let's buckle up and see what's going on. Luna actually did a guest post on Upload VR, which is where I'm getting this information. I'll put a link to the article in the description if you want to follow along or you want to read more about what we're going to talk about. First up, the Meta Wrist Button experimental feature. There's a new option, and I've actually enabled it myself in the experimental features that allows you to have a button on your wrist. It's an option for hand tracking and allows you to have a little button you can actually touch on your wrist to open up the menus and all that jazz while you're using hand tracking. I think it's a pretty intuitive way of doing things. I like it better than pinching your fingers together, and it's closer to having a watch in VR, which I hope someday actually happens. Being able to glance down at a watch on your wrist, get the actual time and updates like you would in real life, no matter what game, and persistent at the OS level would be amazing. We're not there yet, but hopefully this is a step in the right direction. Inside of the data mine, there's also some suggestions in the code that says that there's a downloads folder potentially coming to the app's library. This could potentially make it easier for downloading updates, managing downloaded content, all that stuff right from inside of the app library itself. This next one's actually pretty darn exciting if you've ever used the Meta AI. Meta AI is not perfect, but it's pretty darn smart, and it actually does a pretty good job at doing what you ask it to do, especially if you've got the Ray-Ban Metas, which I use pretty consistently. You can even say something like, "What am I looking at?" and it'll tell you in general terms what you're looking at, or in specific terms if it's a landmark or something like that. Meta AI is potentially coming to the Quest according to some information in this data dive. There is currently a voice command system, kind of like Alexa, but it's pretty dumb and it just does basic stuff. This would be an amazing addition to the platform. It would be like adding Siri on the Apple Vision Pro to the Quest and allowing you to control your system with your voice entirely. But not just that, ask questions, text-to-speech, which actually works really well. A whole bunch of cool things could be possible. All this stuff, by the way, let me mention, in this deep dive that was done, this data mine that Luna did, it's all potentially coming, or potentially coming at some point. Just because it's in the data or the update doesn't mean it's coming in version 66 or coming at all. Sometimes features happen in a test and it never comes to fruition. Or sometimes it could be in the v66 public test channel and it's like 3 or 4 updates away. So keep that in mind as we talk about this and continue on. Next up in the data dive, there's something called the sensor lock privacy feature. There's a reference to something called the sensor lock, which Luna says is a new privacy option, specifically saying where the cameras and the microphones will hard turn off whenever the headset is not being worn. When enabled, the user would instead need to put on their headset, press the power button, and then wait for tracking to initialize. And then that would be when the cameras and the microphones kick on. It's just another secure way of preventing that privacy concern, essentially completely locking out the cameras and the microphones so it couldn't be being used remotely. Calendar sync is pretty cool as well. That's another thing that was in the strings of code as well, being able to actually sync your calendar with your OS of your Quest, probably leaning into the productivity side of using a Quest. Maybe prepping things for the next version of the Quest Pro. Whenever that comes, it'll combat the Apple Vision Pro. Speaking of productivity apps, before we move on with the update, it was just announced that Microsoft is actually bringing apps to the Quest. Instead of just the web-based apps, which we had before, they're actually going to allow you to stream your Windows apps with a 3D extension to your Quest headset. It's called Windows Volumetric Apps. It's a new API for extending 3D elements of PC applications streamed to Quest into 3D space. It specifically says, we're deepening our partnership with Meta to make Windows a first-class experience on Quest devices, and Windows can take advantage of Quest's unique capabilities to extend Windows apps into 3D space, essentially allowing you to access Windows applications in a spatial setting, streaming from your PC, or according to this article on Upload VR, the Windows 365 Cloud PC on virtual monitors in your Meta Quest headset. It's a good sign. the Xbox partnership recently to launch the streaming on the Quest, and also the fact that Xbox is working with Meta to launch a specific Xbox gaming headset is a beginning of hopefully an awesome partnership. Maybe they'll lean towards Meta to help them sell more interesting hardware and take advantage of Xbox properties in VR. One can only hope, but that's what's coming to the Quest. Let's go back to the update stuff. Content adaptive brightness was also mentioned in the code as well, essentially meaning if it's allowed, each app can dictate the brightness of the display, which I'm not really sure why you would change the brightness of the display. Maybe a game that's really bright would need to dim it, or a game that's really dark would need to up it. I don't know, but it allows applications to control the brightness of the display. Maybe on the fly, like not just when the app loads, but maybe it can control the brightness based on what's happening in the game. I don't know. I mean, someday we're going to have the ability to have displays that are so bright that they're like looking at, a real light in real life. So you actually have to shield your eyes when you're looking at a display, like you're looking at a light bulb in the sun. In VR, you put your hand up to shield your eye because it's that bright. Someday we'll get to that point. We're not at that yet, but I imagine at that point you would need applications to control the brightness so that the display could be lighter and darker depending on the circumstances. I doubt that has anything to do with this. That was kind of a tangent and something I get excited over, talking about the future of VR. But anyways, content adaptive brightness is another feature coming to Quest potentially. And also something else exciting, the codec avatars are mentioned as well. It says further work on codec avatars is what Luna mentions it as, saying that previous updates introduced strings that referenced Meta's photorealistic codec avatars. By the way, if you have not seen the codec avatars, you're seeing on screen right now an interview that was done with Zuck, and it's impressive that these are avatars, the codec avatars. Unbelievable. Now, right now, obviously, it takes a lot of computing power, and you have to be scanned in for all this. I mean, it's a big process. But if they could get it to Quest, that would be absolutely amazing at some point, and I think that's the plan. In fact, the new strings reference calibration for the avatars. Maybe at Connect this year, we'll see something. I hope we see codec avatars this year. I think it'd be awesome to bring in these avatars to VR. Also, custom virtual keyboard sizing and positioning. Not groundbreaking, but important. The fact that you could move the keyboard and resize it. Just basic stuff, but stuff that makes the operating system function hopefully better and more seamless and more adjustable. Also, some improvements to the Do Not Disturb were mentioned in the code, saying it was referencing the ability to actually set custom timers for the Do Not Disturb. So you could set when this time happens, start Do Not Disturb, and then turn it off at this time so you don't forget it on, or you don't forget to turn it on if you're having like a gaming session, but you also want to work or whatever. That's apparently in the code as well as improvements to Bluetooth. Luna says that multiple strings seem to suggest that Meta is working on improvements to Bluetooth. One is a feature called Quick Pair, which allows for notifications when a new device is found. The other is the ability to pair controllers in headset. That's what we got for v66. Let me know in the comments what your thoughts are. This isn't the official update notes or the official update at all. This is just the stuff that Luna found in the update for us to chew on until we get official update notes, probably sometime in June. Usually that's what happens. Although we got 2 updates, I think, in May, or at least updates very close together. So who knows? Could be coming anytime, more than likely in June. Hopefully we'll also see a gaming showcase in June as well. What would you want to see in the gaming showcase for games? Let me know in the comments. I've got my fingers crossed we see some big announcements, including some GTA stuff. But who knows? Time will tell if it's actually canceled or if it's still around. Thank you so much for watching and joining me in the booth. Don't forget to subscribe for more Quest content and VR content, and as always, happy questing.